Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and first of all, I want to just apologize if I sound nasally, because I do. Got a little bit of a head cold here, and we're not to be the only one that's sick and disgusted on this program today. I'm joined by my colleague, co-host, cohort, partner in crime. One is Zach Celadonia. Zach, that's not what we expected, dude. Not a good day in the office. Otherwise, how are you doing?
I want to apologize if I sound sad, because I am, to the listeners, because that was not what I was expecting at all. I don't think anybody was really expecting to see what we saw from the Steelers on Sunday at 1 o'clock, outside of maybe people who hate the Steelers. And even some of those people that are on TV and the media came over to our side and were expecting a lot more from the Steelers on Sunday. And they left us empty-handed. There isn't many good things that we can go over what we saw against the 49ers. There's a few things I want to try keep the people up and give us reason for hope. That's what I'm usually all about, but it was ugly. Just to get right down to it, it was an ugly performance on Sunday.
Man, I don't know where to start. Let's start with just, since it's a shorter list, positives.
Shorter list positives. The Bengals also lost.
Yeah, TJ Watt. We'll get to the Bengals in a second. TJ Watt, I would say, is a positive. I saw something like Michael Birch or whoever works with the Steelers PR and is like the stats guy. He said something to the effect of Watt is on pace for 51 sacks this season.
I heard someone say the same thing. Yeah, he's on record-breaking pace right now, TJ Watt.
Yeah, I mean, that was he's the only guy who was out there like really doing his job, I would so to speak, because there's so many things to dissect here. I would also say the kick return game, it looked pretty good too with Anthony McFarland. Everything else, I mean, you could dissect down to just being really bad. I think it starts with the quarterback position. I know a lot of people are going to bitch and complain about Matt Canada. It's going to take everything in my power to not just swear. Usually I have a filter, but since I've been feeling a little under the weather today, I didn't want to, we were just talking about this. I'm like, I didn't want to skip a show and then everybody thinks I just tucked tail because they lost so bad. It's like, hey, I'll own it. I thought that they were going to be a lot more competitive with the 49ers. Everybody's going to blow smoke up Brock Purdy's ass, and I'm still not sure he's all that great. I mean, two things happened in this game. The 49ers did no wrong. Everything they did was executed like damn near to perfection. They didn't have very many mistakes. The Steelers, on the other hand, every chance they could to shoot themselves in the foot, they did. So, and it does start at the quarterback position, but I'm gonna say this much. You get the fair weather fans, probably didn't even watch the preseason games, didn't know what they were watching if they did. And they're out here, or they didn't pay attention at all. And you got a big primetime national game on Fox. It was practically everywhere around the country. You know what? I had that. Here it was. It was in red. Everybody got to see this game, right? They got to see the Steelers get embarrassed. And that's going to be their impression of the Steelers, especially if you go anywhere like west of the Mississippi. That's going to be their impression of the Steelers for the next like 6 or 8 weeks, unless they I'm anticipating they're going to turn around. I'm a firm believer in it's one game, because you look around the NFL, week one's the most unpredictable week, right? And for that reason, like, I'm not going to say, I used to always say, hey, this is an extension of the preseason, all of September. Mike Tomlin teams are slow starters. And the NFL has been like putting them up against like Super Bowl contenders the last 3 seasons in a row. You had the Bills, you had the Bengals, now you had the 49ers, and the last 2 teams fresh off of conference championship games, maybe even the Bills too. I have to go back and look at that. But I mean, they were deep into playoffs, right? They were in the thick of things. So week one, that's where they've been putting them up against. Now you get a home opener. You had some excitement because of the preseason, and Kenny was perfect. But man, let me tell you, the fire Tomlin and fire Matt Canada. Oh, you didn't have your team prepared, this and that. I don't think Matt Canada has anything to do with the defense. That's going to be number one. Missed tackles or anything like that. That has nothing to do. It's complete other side of the ball. Poor punt game with Presley Harvin. He had like a good one here or there, and then he didn't. You know what I mean? Like, the stuff like that is just, it's painful to watch. It has nothing to do with Matt Canada. I actually think if sticking to the offensive side of things, I think you agree with this. And it's hard to say this because Kenny's looked so sharp, and we were talking about, I was like comparing him to like Troy Aikman as far as accuracy. It was not there yesterday at all. And balls are all over the place. Like he was calling an Angel Hernandez strike zone. If you're if you're familiar with the umpire in the MLB, that's completely horrible. So, anyways, like the balls they were nowhere. They were behind. They were above. They were in the dirt. They were at feet. They were double coverage. That's forcing it when you're already behind in a game. But the offense didn't do the defense any favors. Defense didn't do any offense any favors. And I do think this was a bad first game for Kenny Pickett, but I don't think this defines who he is. This would be more worrisome if this was last year. He's a rookie, and this is the first game you get to see from him. Now it's like, wow, this dude just isn't going to amount to a hill of beans, even though we know it's still just one game.
Yeah, it's one game. It's one game for Kenny, and I want to be careful about how I phrase this dealing with Kenny. But first of all, the positives, you nailed them. You took all the positives. I agree with all of them. TJ Watt looked like TJ Watt pre-pectoral injury, which is what you want to see. That is a big positive. That shouldn't be understated. TJ Watt looks like his MVP caliber self, so that's great. McFarland, I think, hammered down the kick return spot for himself. All of his kick returns where he was able to actually field the ball were positive. They were some of the most exciting plays of the game. And I liked what I saw from Calvin Austin in small spurts, being used on offense, more as a receiver. And that about does it for the positives, which is a real shame. We had a good 2-minute drill, I suppose. I come to expect that, though, with the Steelers. Whenever they seem to run a hurry-up or 2-minute drill, whether it's Ben or Kenny, they execute in those situations more often than not. As far as negatives are concerned, I'm mad at everybody. I blame Kenny. I blame Canada. I blame Tomlin. I blame the stadium. I blame the fans. I blame the defense. I blame everybody from top to bottom because it's a trickle-down effect. I do think I'm not out on Kenny at all. I'm still a huge Kenny guy. That's why this hurts so much.
Yeah.
It's because I care, and I really do think he has the goods. I think he's got the it factor to be a franchise quarterback. However, I am concerned that when the game started, it seemed like, okay, 1-3 and out. We can get past that. But shortly after that, the interception, the first interception he threw, looking towards Deontay Johnson, where you could say Deontay may have stumbled. It was a bad decision, but Deontay didn't help at all. Kenny got way, way, way too rattled from that early interception, as did the whole team, it seemed like, from an offensive standpoint. It's like they just turtled up. He became so conservative, checkdowns all over the place. When I turned on Good Morning Football this morning and I saw he threw for 236 yards, I said, what did I miss? So I know that's a lot of garbage time. Allen Robinson, I think, eclipsed 50 yards. So there were garbage time throws that he made, but it was a bad performance from Kenny. He looked like rookie year Kenny Pickett, and we're past that now. We want to see improvements. We want to see the preseason Kenny Pickett we saw taking shots down the field, and it's not like it wasn't being called. There were plays where receivers were running open, but it's easy to say that when you're at the game and you're looking at the receiver. It's hard to watch Kenny, the line, and the receivers at the same time. And I'll say this, the offensive line did Kenny no favors. He had guys in his face all game long. Particularly, it seemed like the middle of the line was getting pushed back into his lap a lot. It's hard not to blame Canada and Tomlin because they're the coaches. So you feel like, what can they do differently to help the situation? And it didn't seem like anything was helping the situation. The defense, the Niners had their way the whole game. Anytime McCaffrey was bottled up for 5 yards or less, you got to cheer from the crowd because we all were just waiting for that next big play to happen. Brandon Ayuk looked like prime Randy Moss. He was open all day.
You ain't lying.
Patrick Peterson had a really rough day. He had 1 or 2 times where he had a good pass break. Other than that, terrible day from Patrick Peterson. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I didn't hear his name all game, and I love Minkah, so don't know what was going on there. If Purdy was just instructed, hey, don't, anywhere 39 is, stay away from him. But the defense was very under-inspiring, as well as the offense. I do think, and I think that twice over now, the 49ers may be the best team in the NFL. It's weird because they have a quarterback like Brock Purdy, who, albeit kicked our ass, he isn't viewed as like a top 10 franchise glamorous quarterback. So it kind of takes a little bit of the spotlight off of them. But I can tell you firsthand, after seeing them week one in person, they might be the best team in the NFL. And it's week one. A lot of weird things happen in week one. Last year, week one, the Niners lost to the Bears, who looked awful yesterday. That's another positive I've been able to take away from this is as bad as we looked, there was something in the air yesterday in NFL week one because the Bengals looked horrible.
Giants.
The Bears looked horrible.
Giants.
The Browns hardly looked good. They just did enough to beat the Bengals, which wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah.
There were a lot of underwhelming performances in the NFL yesterday or Sunday that stack up worse than the Steelers. So all of these things are helping keeping me going. The season's not over. I know there's a lot of games left to be played. It was a non-conference game versus a great team. There's still reason to hope and believe the Steelers can right the ship here. It's very, very early. But let it be known, I am concerned with Kenny's confidence. We need a good game here. We need to see a good game where the offense is humming again because that was the most alarming part of the whole game. I listed a whole bunch of negatives there, but the way the offense and Kenny just went into this depressing state after the first interception is something that I'm going to be thinking about all week. He needs to be able to overcome adversity as a first-round franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, dude, where does it start with? Why the hell did Mike Tomlin take the ball first on the coin toss? They win the coin toss.
Man, I'm telling you, my good friend wanted that to be the case, and I'm like, I get it, dude, the preseason, because preseason, every time they got the ball, they scored a touchdown. If they would have came out and done that and set the tone, that's beautiful. But you always run such a risk of if you go 3 and out or you turn it over on that opening possession, it's too much of a risk reward where the risk far outweighs the reward, in my opinion. I always kick ball at half in my own mind. And in Madden, I always kick ball to get it at half because you always have that to fall back on. I really don't think it's a scared mentality at all. I think it's good strategy to want the ball at half. And Tomlin he's infamous for coaching with his emotions at times and making decisions with his emotions at times. And I think he felt the energy of Acrisure Stadium and he wanted to get the ball, go down and score. And instead it blew up in our face.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because the 3 and out. And then, of course, you've got the 49ers go straight down the field, 7 plays, 54 yards, score a touchdown. Steelers get the ball back after the first 3 and out. And, I mean, plenty of mistakes if I go through this. It's like almost everything they did was in a negative. If they had anything that was a positive, very choppy game, too. Because if you had a positive, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Deontay has this great, like, catch and run, like, you know, in the third quarter, fourth quarter, later in the game. And then he gets hurt. And then the game just stops there. There was never a chance for for the Steelers to build any momentum.
The rhythm.
Nothing. Zero when it comes to rhythm. I'm irritated all the way around. I like how you said you blame the stadium, blame the fans. So many 49ers fans there. It made me sick. It was about as bad as the Bills or the Cowboys years ago when they came in. I've never heard anything like that in my life. Like, I wanted to, kick and punch people. Like, it was very annoying. And shame on the fans for, selling out like that.
Me either. It was like watching your best friend get his ass kicked from like a Zoom call and you're on the other side of the nation. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Because they started a "Let's Go Niners" chant late or early in the fourth. And I just was sitting there with my arms crossed like a little kid who got told he can't have dessert tonight. I couldn't do anything about it. It's just like, let him go off because what we saw today was embarrassing, man. It's so hard when you're that excited. And even if you were at home watching the game, I feel like most fans had this hope and had this belief that we can hang with the Niners. We can make this a game. And it was over before it started. The best part of the game was the 2-minute drill going into halftime. And when you look back at it, I laugh thinking like the most excited we all were and the most hope we had was when it was still 20-7. Like that was when everybody was juiced up and re-energized. Oh, we got this. We can do this. And then as soon as halftime ended, it was like the third play from scrimmage for the Niners. McCaffrey goes 65 yards. And that, I believe, there was a lot of game left at that point, but that was the nail in the coffin. That's when you saw shoulders slumping. The energy was down from the crowd. The energy was down from the team. Injuries were piling up. It was a collapse.
Yeah, it was 2 plays. Second play. And that's what I hate about not get the ball for the second half. Everybody's out in the concession area or in the restroom or whatever. It's like, people, you spend like $100 some per ticket. You got to know that like there's 15 minutes. It's very short halftime in the NFL. It's like 15
Yeah.
minutes. That clock is going like as soon as like it hits zero at the end of the second quarter. So if you're not out there already in line to get your, Heinz hot dog or whatever, that's all said and done with. And I hate that the place is like cavernous and empty and there's no crowd noise. There's no one there as far as a fan representation to combat or even make it difficult for like a snap count or anything like that. Like it drives me crazy.
It's bad when they don't even play Renegade, and that never happened.
Oh yeah,
Either they don't need it and they're up 50-0, or they're getting crushed. It's the other side of it, and that's what happened. There even was a point where they have a new like electro techno dubstep song they throw on. They love Bodak Yellow by Cardi B, not with the lyrics, but they love the beat. And they have this other one where it's like this electric like dubstep. And I look down on the field, and George Kittle is going like off in the middle of the field, hyping the crowd up, dancing back and forth. And I'm like, they're getting Kittle hyped up, dude. This is the last thing we need. It's not working on our side. It's getting them excited. It was almost like when the Bills got all excited over Renegade. I was like, Kittle's just the crazy guy to go down there. Like, oh, they're trying to hype up the crowd. Well, I like it. I like how it sounds. Now I'm excited. And he was the one guy who didn't really kill us, but they didn't need him. He could have missed the game, and they would have been just fine without him. And granted, I didn't see how he blocked because it was hard to watch everything, but they would have been just fine without one of the NFL's best tight ends.
Yeah, maybe I didn't give enough credit there. I won't give a lot of credit to Brock Purdy. I mean, he didn't make any mistakes, but everything was so easy to him. Like, I don't know where Ayuk comes from, but when you have McCaffrey's the highest paid running back, I made these comments on like the short pregame too. It was like, you got a lot of high paid players on that side of the ball, and people were trying to make a comparison. Well, here's this last pick, 7th round pick versus the 1st round pick out of the same draft class. It's like, it's really not a fair comparison. Like when you have like one of the top tight ends in the league, top paid running backs in the league, top fullback, top left tackle, like they have, Deebo Samuel, whatever the hell he's paid too. And that's going to suck for the NFC, to be completely honest, because we always talk about like the rookie quarterback contracts, and Brock Purdy's making like, I don't know, we might make more combined. So, I mean, it's just,
I realize we sound like babies when we say this, but I won't come off this hill. I feel like, if Purdy was on like not the 49ers, he wouldn't be having as good of a time. And you can just tell by watching the rush. We got TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward for a majority of the game, and there was no rush outside of TJ. Credit to TJ. TJ played like TJ does, but Purdy had all day to throw, and something clicked with their offensive scheme, the Niners, where I don't know if it was zone or the Steelers were just getting beat that bad in man. But once Purdy realized if he just has at least 3 seconds to throw, someone in the middle of the field, i.e. Brandon Ayuk, is going to break open. It happened so many times. The amount of 3rd down conversions they had, it was actually low at one point. They were like 5 for 11, I think, when they showed on the scoreboard. And my buddy was like, there's no way that's true. And I was like, dude, because they're not getting in 3rd down often.
Yeah.
When they are, they're converting. But the similarity of all of the successful plays the Niners were having was so hard to watch, because as a fan and as a viewer, you're like, how are they missing this time and time and time again? It was Purdy drops back, has enough time, boom, middle of the field, 10 to 20 yards. It was automatic. Didn't have to push sideline routes much. Didn't have to use running backs as a pass catcher much. It was receivers in the middle of the field that couldn't be stopped.
Yeah, I didn't understand it. People are trying to find answers. You don't find them just yet. This is a team that's growing, still young, still learning. You're not just going to throw Joey Porter out there and that's the answer. You're not going to fire Matt Canada and that's just the answer. And there's so many things to take off of this, because like you get a lead, play with a lead. They're already up like 10-0 after an interception. And then the Steelers just can't answer anything on offense at all. They punt 4 out of the first 5 possessions. And then that pick that was thrown. And then, of course, whatever. Deontay, does he fall? Does he even get there? I don't know. Like, Kenny was off. He was even off on the touchdown drive somewhat there, too. It didn't help. Like, guys were dropping like flies here or there. Cam Hayward gets hurt. DeMarvin Leal gets hurt. Pat Freiermuth comes off, then comes back. It was just...
George Pickens almost got ejected in the final minute. That was inevitable, dude.
Well,
that was inevitable.
Yeah, first possession of the second half. The 3rd quarter was Deontay making that big play and then getting hurt. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like the team just, like I said, it was just very choppy. It couldn't get anything going. But to me, I'm not like, everybody's like, oh, look at this kindergarten offense. And I'm like, okay, they didn't establish the run. I'm never a fan of not doing that. But I already knew that this was going to be a hard team to run against. This is a team that you should be able to throw against. You had Lenore or whoever his name is. Now you have Afunga and you have Ward. Those guys are solid, of course. But the Niners were very bad against the pass last year. So, again, it's week 1. You don't have any tape or anything to go off of except for whatever tendencies from the previous year. You might see some returning personnel, things like that you're studying. And you kind of got to make it up on the fly. So I don't necessarily fault throwing, but there was times where I just felt like, okay, Kenny looks for Allen Robinson, missed him behind Freiermuth, like overthrows somebody, underthrows somebody. It was just like, it wasn't working. It just wasn't working.
That's where I find a hard time zeroing in on who to blame the most, because I'll tell you what, from a standpoint, like the fans, when you're down 17-0 or more, establishing the run needs to be, I mean, what are we doing? You know, like if you're down 10-0, I can still understand, but urgency needs to rise here. Okay. And I like the idea of the Steelers still utilizing the run game. I've been vocal that I think Najee and Warren can play crucial roles for this offense. But there comes a point where you got to chuck that and just start letting Kenny throw, doing pass plays. On the flip side of that, I recognize and realize Kenny was playing bad yesterday. So Canada sticking with running the ball on first and second down on numerous times while you're down, I think it goes hand in hand with, though, he lost a little confidence in Kenny, like we all showed a little bit. So do I wish they would have not tried to run on first and second down as much as they were down? Yes, 100% yes. But at the same time, I can see why they may have been hesitant to do that, because Kenny was struggling so much. So you're really just in like a rock and a hard place here where, well, if we get lucky and bust off a nice long run, that'll help Kenny, you know. So you got to look at it from all these angles. And that's what made me realize there's equal blame all around the roster.
Oh yeah. I'm going to go through all the playlists, but you made another comment earlier about like looking around the rest of the league. And I'm like, Joe Burrow just got what kind of contract to throw for 82 yards, 14-31, and Watson wasn't much better, 16-29, 154 yards. Those guys both were terrible in that game there. You take a look at last night's game, the Cowboys, they're returning most of their players, right? And I think that helps. But of course, Burrow didn't play a whole lot in the preseason, and then the Bengals end up flopping like that. But the Giants got like absolutely smoked, made me feel a little better about life.
Those were two divisional games too.
Yeah.
Those were serious games for those two, the Bengals and the Giants. They really screwed up royally there, because those were divisional games. Ours weren't even in the same or the Niners weren't even in the AFC.
Yeah. That could be the worst game. Somebody said this could be the toughest team the Steelers face all year, and get it out the way. And yeah, I think it taught them a lesson. And I don't expect to see the same thing next week. You've got Browns fans, they're jumping all up and down already, because they're like, oh, we're 1-0 and we beat the Bengals. And immediately, like, their first instinct is to start coming my way. And I'm like, go away. Like, pay attention to your own team, mind your own business. So I'm taking receipts. I'm just going to let some people know. I started taking them yesterday, because I just feel like next Monday is going to be a whole different thing. But that's for another day and another story there. So
definitely. The Browns, they're setting themselves up.
Yeah. Steelers first possession, just real. You got pass, you've got the jet sweep, and then people were bitching about jet sweeps. I think I only saw the one. Was there one or was there two in the whole game?
I know the one was a little fancy at the beginning, and that didn't really work too good. I can only remember one, because one, I've blocked most of the game from my memory, and two, I was drinking.
Yeah, and then I don't know, like sun came out too. Were you in the sun? Like the sun comes out.
No, we were covered.
Dude, that was like what was also pretty killer, because you had an overcast day. It was supposed to rain, if you remember. And actually, I commented on your bets, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this, like these anytime or whatever, like bets, because, well, I put somebody on J.K. Dobbins against the Texans, and then he tears his Achilles. He's out for the year. And I was just like, oh,
but he scored though.
He scored, but I had it on yards.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So
wait, J.K. Dobbins got hurt?
Yeah, you didn't know that? Out for the season.
No, I'm just kidding, dude. I'm kidding. That was a joke, because he gets hurt every year. Yeah, I feel bad for him. I do, but like, you had to, dude. The guy's made of glass. I feel bad for him. Truthfully, he doesn't deserve it. but you could see that coming a mile away. Something was going to happen to him. He's just got one of those careers, you
Yeah,
know?
well,
And
week one though. I'm like,
yeah.
come on. Like, I'm like, I should be
Well,
safe for
we
week
got to
one.
hope Cam's okay. I don't like hearing that he got a groin injury. Groins are tricky. That'll
Hamstrings too.
nag you, and like it's very unique. You can't like go full speed. It's a weird pain you have on the inside of your leg. So I am concerned about that. Glad Fryermuth didn't get knocked out because we all know he has a concussion problem, and he was able to come back in and even score. But yeah, the Dobbins thing, that was a poor taste joke on my part. However, I will say this. I'm not crying for any of the AFC North. Like the fact that the
No.
Bengals played so shitty, the Browns barely beat them, the Ravens, I mean, they had their time in the sun, but I think Ronley Stanley also got hurt for them
Yeah.
and J.K. Dobbins. So we're the Steelers by no means are in terrible shape. It was a terrible game, but they're not in terrible shape.
Yeah, and I would say if we saw something different with the preseason and this was like a continuation, I understand people are like, oh, preseason, you're not playing against full, like, you know, you might be part-timers or whatever. And it's like, no, I really do think this reminds me of, it's like somebody's just going to blame whoever else, right? Ben's had bad games in the office and people would blame Todd Haley or Bruce Arians or Randy Fichtner or whoever. Right. And I had to defend Todd Haley a lot of times because I saw where the plays were going. I saw the ideas. I saw the play calls, but geez, after about 3 possessions as I go through these, does it really matter? You know what I mean? You know, there was a pass, there was a jet sweep. Kenny sacked right at the beginning, and, you know, good coverage, maybe even some bad line play at times. I was trying to figure that out too. The worst thing about the line is you got to hope like Chuks Okorafor is going to be okay, because moving Dan Moore immediately over and bringing Broderick Jones in, those edges were that we might have had 3 offensive linemen out there. It looked really
I wish
bad.
that little mini experiment had gone better to maybe get Jones on the field faster, but Moore going over to right tackle did not work as well as him being second team right tackle in camp going against our backup edge rushers. He did not look good on the right side, which is a bummer because I saw the streak the Steelers could go down to get Broderick Jones on the field. If Chuks is out, just bump Dan Moore to right, put Broderick Jones in. I don't know if you feel comfortable with that now after what we saw.
Yeah, and again, 49ers.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You can keep saying that. That's one part of this that's always going to be there for us, and it really sucked as a fan. And it's deflating, especially week one, especially after the preseason the Steelers had first home opener. It's supposed to be the beginning of the Kenny Pickett era in year 2, and it sucked. But there's a long season left, and I did feel very loved because talk of the town in my circle of friends and family was all, "Is Zach okay?" And I got home to like text messages and calls, and this morning I talked to my mom, and she was like, "One of my coworkers follows you on Twitter," to which I was like, "Oh God, well, he's a brave man." And she was like, "He called this morning to talk about stocks and stuff. Before he started, he was like, 'Is Zach doing okay?'"
Oh, geez.
And I am okay. I can tell you I am okay. Got a lot of hope left, but I'd be lying to the listeners and the viewers, and I would lose credibility if I didn't say yesterday was a bad game. Pretty much as bad as it gets.
Oh, I know. I felt like it's one of the worst ones that I've seen. I've seen a couple bad ones, and that was one of the worst because every phase of football is pretty bad. Of course, Niners
Dude,
score.
I was telling people around me, and I've told this story to other people for years, but I felt so bad for my mom for the longest time because the only game she's been to in person was a couple years ago. We played the Jaguars at home, and Ben threw 5 interceptions, and we could not have looked worse. And since that moment, I've always been like, "Mom, I feel so bad for you. You got to get back there. You got to go to another game," because I want her to have a good time. Well, I don't feel bad for my mom anymore. I paid my dues because I just went to the worst game I had ever seen and then some. You're talking about maybe 3.5 minutes of cheers total after being there for 3 hours. Nobody deserves that. I found out that is my hell. If I die and go to hell, it's going to be a continuation of the Steelers just getting their asses kicked at home, and I'm in attendance.
Yeah, and it's either warm or raining. Like throw the bad weather on top of it. That's man. Those are all some very solid points. Got to put Zach on suicide watch. I try to explain too. This was kind of funny. I told you about like my girlfriend who is not a football person, but she was at the preseason game and she was like, "What happened?" Like I like thought like everybody was kind of like real excited. Yeah, like this is somebody that knows like pretty much next to nothing about football and made the observation that it seemed like a lot of people were getting on board and thinking that they were going to do a lot better than what they actually did. And I'm like, you hit the nail right on the head. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, good thing you weren't there at this one, because this would have been a poor experience. You wouldn't want to be there. So hopefully that doesn't affect like people showing up for Monday Night Football. And yeah, just hoping that we don't have like an influx of like Cleveland fans coming, because there was a point made too, because, my former hometown, Youngstown, Ohio, that's the base of DeBartolo Corporation. Eddie DeBartolo, former owner, and of course, just keeping it within the family. He had to sell the 49ers years ago. And it's, Jed York or Denise DeBartolo York or whoever's like in charge of that whole thing now, but they still own the 49ers. So like, there's a very big like 49ers kind of camp just an hour away from Pittsburgh. So that might have had part of it like with the fans, but I'm going to tell you, having grown up in Youngstown, a lot of those people were very fair weather if they were 49ers fans. And even in the 80s, the Browns were still solid. So it was still like, it was either Browns or Steelers, because you had the Steelers heyday in the 70s. The Browns were good in the 80s. And then they were kind of back and forth in the 90s. They were competitive. And now the Browns have sucked for like the last 20 years. So
yeah, man, as a 29-year-old growing up, to me, the Niners were one of the worst teams in the NFL. They sucked.
Yeah.
It took till about when they got Kaepernick and Harbaugh, when like they were viewed as like an actual good team. Or Alex Smith a little bit too. But yeah, when I was the youngest I'd watched football and like knew about the 49ers was like right about when T.O. left. And that's when they had a little bit of good times after Joe Montana and Jeff Garcia, but I didn't watch any of that. So as far as I knew, for the longest time, they were a bad team. But ever since Harbaugh came through there, they've been one of the best consistently for a while, regardless of the coaching switches, right? They've had a couple hiccups here and there, but they've kind of regained their spot as like an elite team.
They're usually snake bitten by injuries, like just
that
as bad as anybody
too,
else. Like that's how they ended up going to Purdy. But I know people think I'm crazy, but I mean, really, when you take a look at Brock Purdy, 19 of 29, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's just enough. You know what I mean? But it really helps when you have Christian McCaffrey run for 152 as part of that. So, I mean, Brandon Ayuk, 8 catches, caught all 8 balls that were thrown his way, 129 yards and the 2 touchdowns. That's really rough. So Steelers, okay, so you had the interception. So I was just going through like the play calling type stuff too, just through the game book. So the second possession was a Najee run. They lost 2 yards. Fred Warner. We haven't even mentioned Fred Warner. And Fred Warner is like might be the best middle linebacker in the NFL.
Oh, definitely. He is. He is. He almost got Kenny on a pick 6, which I'll defend Kenny here. It looked like he was getting hit from behind as he let that go, because it was criminally behind Allen Robinson. So Warner almost pick 6'd him there. But at that point, you're trying to look for any positives you can. And I'm like, he was getting hit as he threw that. Not that if Warner would have taken it to the house, that would have fallen on deaf ears. But I excuse that from Kenny because he was under intense duress there.
Yeah, I mean, so the 49ers are already up 7-0, and you had Kenny finds Calvin Austin, and he looks for Deontay Johnson where he slipped and fell, and Travarius Ward ends up picking him off. Now you have a change of possession, and you go all the way through all this. The Steelers' defense actually kind of holds. 3rd and 14, you had this whole series with a blocked kick that wasn't a blocked kick, 10-0. Steelers get the ball again. Short little pass to Allen Robinson, 2 yards, trying to keep, and people got to understand too, it's not really a dink and dunk. It's not really a Matt Canada thing. This is when you have like a premier defensive line, Javon Hargrave. You've got Nick Bosa and guys like that are up there. You're trying to stretch the field and keep these guys from breathing down your quarterback's neck. So
they're taking what the defense gives them.
Yeah, correct. Najee, they try and run with Najee, no gain. And then deep middle pass for Deontay Johnson, incomplete. That was a
Kenny, bad ball,
and they punt.
Bad ball. Yeah,
that's a 54-yard punt. I wanted to preface this too by the punt game being bad, because Harvin's first punt, 34 yards from the Steelers 20. The Steelers on 20, and he only kicks at 34 yards. San Francisco ends up starting a lot of these possessions. I think it shows me where their starting possessions are. Let me take a look.
What's Brandon Mann doing?
Braid Man, I don't know. We're about to find out, I think, very soon, because San Francisco starts on their 46, the Steelers 48. Their own 32, and then the 50-yard line. I mean, those are the first 4 possessions of the game. I'm like, how can you like?
Yeah, I know. Harvin got off one punt where he put them on like the 30, and I was like, oh, that's refreshing. they're at least on that side of the field now.
I know. How bad is that when you're thinking? It's the same thing I thought of during the game too. So let me see here. San Francisco, so they're up 10-0. Like I said, 54-yard punt. Then you've got, let's see, Brock Purdy. Oh, San Francisco's 32. I don't think this was the one. I'm trying to find the one with TJ Watt where there was the strip sack. And I do believe it was right before it went up 17-0 here, if I'm reading this correctly.
Didn't he? He got 2, but the one was under. The one they didn't say was an actual fumble, but he got 2, right?
Yeah, that's so the one they said. Okay, so
he got the one himself that they gave to us, and the other was the Purdy one where he got it with his butt.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is the one. Yeah, with his butt. So I was having this argument actually with Brian via text. Is having the ball? Can you possess the ball on your ass? Like that just. Tell me what natural part of football does a player hold the ball behind his back or on his posterior, like to run or catch or anything like that?
Boise State Statue of Liberty, that's it. But dude, I'm telling you, the ref didn't do a good job of explaining that because he was like, the runner was down by contact. He very clearly wasn't. He fumbled. So like, why would they say he was down by contact? Just tell us, okay, it was a fumble, but Purdy fell on it, so we're giving it to him. The whole like, the Steelers are challenging the runner's not down by contact. I was like, it's clearly out. TJ got it out, and Purdy falls on it, and they're like, oh, he was down by contact. So that was real weird the way they phrased that in general.
Yeah, I didn't understand it at all. And that was my whole point was back and forth with Brian. And then I believe, no, that's going to be on the next series. It wasn't on this one. So there was a fumble in this one that was recovered. San Francisco eventually takes it 9 plays, 68 yards, scores another touchdown, and they're up 17-0. It ends up being very demoralizing at this point. Now you're going to start off with Pickett, short pass, little screen pass, and it goes backwards. It's Jalen Warren, and you have a holding call on Chukwuekorfor 4 to begin with. And it just goes downhill from there. You had a Sumalo false start, and it's 3rd and 20, and then Kenny gets sacked. I mean, he technically gets sacked right at the line of scrimmage. They didn't lose any yards there, but still, it's like this was too consistent. Like if that's one series, okay, chalk it up, mulligan, go back. Defense is out there. I had this before, about 4 minutes left. I had the stats, so I could go through all this. So Jalen Warren left tackle 1 yard. Jalen Warren 3 yards. Pickett tries to find Pat Freiermuth. He doesn't on 3rd and 6. They punt again. This was from the Steelers 40. Harvin punts 36 yards to the San Francisco 24. And you're just like 36 yards. Like, come on, dude. Like,
someone help us out.
All right. I'm going to say this as I say former soccer player. I haven't played in a couple of years. I think I have more legs. I think I could do a better job. And I know a lot of people, they sit there and they try to be smart asses. I think I could do better. I think I could.
Yeah, I don't know what happens to him, man. The regular season, he looked fine in preseason, but that was the case for the whole roster.
Yeah, I mean the same with camp too. 49ers actually forced the punt before the 2-minute warning. So I had somewhere around like with 4 minutes left notes that I screen capped this. At this point, San Francisco, that was even before the 2-minute warning at that drive that led them into the 2-minute warning. Somewhere in the middle of this, they had already had 12 first downs. They were 2 of 5 on 3rd down and 1 of 1 on 4th down. See, Steelers couldn't stop that on 4th down either. That would have been a big momentum shift as well. Let's see here. They were 2 of 3 in the red zone, so that was obviously with the 17-0 score. They'd run 32 plays for 204 yards. The Steelers had run 15 plays for 1 yard. Steelers had 0 first downs, 0 for 5 on 3rd downs. Absolutely,
it's almost
just
impressive because that's hard to do.
Like, and I don't even know if it's worth going through the rest of this. I mean, it's
really not. I mean, except for the fact, I'll say this too, Kenny's other interception where he just locked on Connor Hayward. I don't know what he was thinking there, trying to make a play. I appreciate that. But if you're going to throw a ball in between 2 or 3 guys, man, just do that for George Pickens instead.
Yeah.
Because he might make the catch. Doing it for Connor Hayward, I know he's your guy. I like Connor Hayward too. But that was a wild decision in which I know the pace of the game at that point, but we still had like a little sliver of hope that we might do something. And that was it. After that interception, the Hufanga got like flagged for pitching it forward. I was like, they're toying with us now, man. This is over. That's when you started to see people leave the game.
I know. I'm not one to leave as one that I really thought about leaving. So
Same.
Yeah. So here's something for food for thought for everyone that wants to fire Tomlin and fire Matt Canada. And like I said, I do think if Kenny's sharper, you'll see a little bit. You'll at least see some first down conversions. Like these guys, these weren't catchable balls. So I'm not gonna like blame like route trees or play calls. I didn't really have. It's hard to have any problem with that when you're down like 10 and 17 nothing like in the first quarter. This is what you do with the script. You just rip it up and throw it.
Just trying to make something stick.
Yeah, you're playing from behind. You're getting desperate. You're in a panic mode, and that's not a good place to be week one at all. So against a team that has largely played together, and we're just in the NFC Championship game, so the year before. So there's a lot more continuity there. But why aren't we talking about Terrell Austin? Like, I think that he needs to have a little hot seat too, because not stopping the run are these big runs that are contained. I see people bitching about Levi Wallace or, Patrick Peterson, and he had a few passes knocked down and this and that. Scheme wise, I know Keith Butler was always like the scapegoat and stuff too, but a lot of this run stuff, like, it was carried over from last year too. So that's got to be better. It's got to be a lot better.
Yeah, run defense in the middle of the field. But I highlighted earlier how Purdy was able to go to the middle of the field to Ayuk seemingly anytime he wanted, 8 for 8, targeting him in the middle of the field or wherever else he caught the ball. So, yeah, they were underprepared for McCaffrey, and they were underprepared for Ayuk, and they were underprepared for Purdy, just his poise, really, and not being phased and just taking whatever was open, which a lot of the time was at least one guy. So I think Austin deserves blame for sure. I said the defense, and I should have phrased it led by Terrell Austin, because he does kind of go under the radar as a guy who doesn't get much hate or critique. I think because the whole him even getting the defensive coordinator job was super under the radar and super. I guarantee there are some injuries out there that think Keith Butler is still a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, of course. Or the Tomlin. Tomlin does it all, of course, and Austin's just there as a figurehead. But that's got to be better for sure.
It will be too.
Yeah,
that's the. I want to make that clear. I'm not all doom and gloom. I think we're gonna get on track. We got better games ahead, better days. This was really, like, you hear people talk about worst case scenario. This game was worst case scenario.
And I'll say that much too. Like, the offense did the defense no favors. 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Those guys were getting gassed. That's how you get guys like, Keanu Benton played nearly half a game. Nick Herbig outsnapped Cam Hayward in this game.
Yeah.
Because Hayward gets dinged. I mean, these early games, maybe guys aren't playing a whole lot in the preseason. There's all kinds of stuff that always happens with some of this stuff. Joey Porter with only the 7 snaps. People were like, was he out there? There was like one play where there was like a pretty errant throw from Purdy, and luckily that went out of bounds, because I was like, all I saw was, and this was later in the game, of course, I saw just a lane for Porter, much like preseason or camp or wherever we may have seen these plays, to just take that to the house. And boy, would that have actually been like a little bit of something exciting, but that ball ended up sailing out of bounds. And that's about all I got for all that. Like, you didn't really see anything from Chris Boswell. I mean, he had a really nice kick that went right inside the pylon instead of getting flagged for an extra 15 yards. It would have been icing on the cake of terrible things that were happening. Because other than that, like I said, it was just TJ Watt. I thought Marcus Golden played pretty well for as much as he could. I liked the outside linebackers for the most part.
Herbig was right there with TJ on TJ's strip sack that they actually called a strip sack and let TJ have the ball. Herbig converged on the other side. So that was pretty cool to see. And first game for the rookies, I wasn't expecting any one of them to really wreck shop. And the fact they all got in and like got their feet wet, Washington got to play a lot. That was pretty cool. But I wasn't able to like keep up with what he was doing because he didn't get any targets, Washington. It was strictly blocking formations that I think he was in for. But I saw it when Porter was in there, like you're referring to, and it looked like at one point they were down on the goal line. He's waving his arms, like, and they did a motion, and I'm like, dude, he's so confused. Like, he was like asking for help, but they got him lined up. But I was like, he's clearly a rookie out there, and it might be the same play you're talking about where he almost had a chance to pick six it, but it wasn't. The rookies are the least of my concerns right now after what I saw week one. So I'm not coming down too hard on them because I think we'll see Benton improve. Porter snap count will increase. Broderick Jones might get out there. Darnell Washington's going to continue to get utilized and get better. And if you want to throw Calvin Austin in there as a technical rookie, he did enough to make me feel like, well, this guy he's at least on the field and making plays for us. He's not going to be a career injury guy that we never get to see play or utilized in the offense. He's getting his fair shake now. So that was encouraging in a way.
It was. Yep. We'll end up reconvening Monday night game for next week. So things are a little out of disarray. So probably another show later in the week to cover the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to take a chance to watch that game in its entirety instead of little snippets here or there, and get a little bit of a basis there. I'm feeling though that the Steelers team that everyone saw on Sunday is not the team that's going to end up finishing the season. I mean, championships aren't won in September. Well, we can say at least that much. And this was really a wake-up call for everyone, top to bottom, in the entire organization. The only guy I'll never forget, there was playing basketball when I was younger. There was a game like where I scored like half of our team's points. I scored like 29 points. And I came into practice the next day. We had this half Irish, half Italian older guy that was coach. His name was Rocky. We called him Rock.
What a combo.
Oh, and he was also a former Marine and a cop. So very much disciplinarian. Made everyone run but me because everyone else stunk up the joint. And the only reason I tell this story is not to blow myself up, but they go back to practice like tomorrow, or maybe they'll push it back an extra day because of the Monday night game. I didn't look at the calendar, but everyone run laps except for you, TJ. TJ, you're
Ball's
the only
life.
guy. Yeah. He's the only one. You're the only one who did your job. So, all right.
You know, Kenny hates losing. He hates to lose. He hates it. Well, show me that, son. I hope this lingers with Kenny, because I still believe in him. I still think he's got franchise quarterback material. I still think he's this team's quarterback in the future. But I hope he remembers how this feels.
Yeah, I mean, and I just looked at everything else around the NFL. Like, did anyone expect the Rams to house the Seahawks too? Like, that was...
That's what I mean. I feel better waking up today seeing like the NFL. There were like 20 teams that played bad yesterday. You know, misery loves company.
Yeah. Well, that's the only solace I could take with everything, at least for now. But a win would always be nice. Or, you know, would you prefer they played really hard and then just ended up losing in a close game to a better team? Absolutely, because there's more positives you could take from it. You can be like, oh, you know what? They put up 20 points on the 49ers or whatever. And it's like, it's even really hard to take away that final drive at the end of the half. It almost felt like a shell defense or prevent. And I was like, but that's what they needed to do, though. They needed to get those points.
They gave us pity points.
Pity points, but at least they got a touchdown out of it. At least they got points. At least they got something out of it, and they made it like 20-7. And it's just the collapse of the defense, these big long runs that contain. Levi Wallace is the one that missed that tackle, I believe. He had the position on McCaffrey and just completely whiffed. And
Casey got laid out.
Yeah. Oh man, and he got flattened. It's when you see that and it's like Najee like stiffs arms somebody or hurdles someone and you're like, oh yeah, the Vance McDonald play from years ago against the Buccaneers is like, oh yeah. When it's the other way around, you're just kind of like, you're that meme where you got the like kind of Muppet character that looks the other direction.
or Homer Simpson going into the hedges.
Yes, going back into the hedges. Exactly. So, all right, folks, that'll do it for us here. We've got nothing else to talk about. Because it
gets better. It gets better.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, don't jump ship right now unless, like, if you have extreme faith. And like I said, I'm not much of a betting person. I just took advantage of a promo with the whole J.K. Dobbins thing. So I was like, I'll throw money at this one because I was like, oh, anytime touchdown for the Steelers. I was like, I should have took Christian McCaffrey anytime TD. That would have been good. But yeah, their Super Bowl odds have gone up. So if you want to throw some money on that, well, everyone's like back on to piling on to them, go right ahead. But there's some
might jump on to win the AFC North. They could do that. The Bengals suck too.
Yeah, and like, okay, so Tomlin lost, Pete Carroll lost, Andy Reid lost this week. You know, there's a lot to take. You know,
Facts.
This is
Sean Payton.
It's tough. It's one game. Oh, that's a bitter pill to swallow too. Like, oof, Raiders, oof. I know the Steelers get them in a week after. And Garoppolo's another guy that always feels like is the bare minimum type. He threw for 20 and 26 for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's like,
when do we play them?
Week 3.
He'll be hurt by then.
I get hurt next week. I don't know who they're playing against, but he'll get hurt in practice or something. But they were pretty ugly too. They were like, you know, their run offense, just a little preview ahead, unless they turn some things around. 29 carries for 61 yards. It's a 2.1 average. That is absolutely miserable. Josh Jacobs 2.5 average, 19 carries for 48 yards. Another guy that got a big
show
contract.
Me the money.
Yeah, all these guys that got paid didn't do too hot. So hopefully they'll turn around, except for TJ. TJ looked back to form. So
Of course. Of course.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. My name's Joe. His name is Zach. Till next time, folks, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.